the streets of South Central Los Angeles, a place where the night brings a chilling silence, and the flickering streetlights cast long, eerie shadows. This is a neighborhood where the struggle for survival is a daily battle, and the line between hope and despair is razor-thin, a place where hope and despair walk hand in hand. Families trying to make ends meet, children playing amidst the decay, and the homeless seeking refuge wherever they can. The community is resilient, but the challenges are immense. For over 2 decades, a shadow stalked these streets, a figure that moved silently, almost invisibly, through the night. The residents whispered about him, but few knew the true extent of his terror. A predator lurked, preying on the vulnerable. He was a master of disguise, blending into the background, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. His presence was a constant, haunting reminder of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. His name, Lonnie Franklin Jr., would become synonymous with terror, a seemingly ordinary man with a dark, sinister secret. To the outside world, he was just another face in the crowd, but to his victims, he was a nightmare incarnate. The Grim Sleeper, they called him. A name that struck fear into the hearts of many. It was a moniker that captured the essence of his crimes. Long periods of inactivity followed by sudden, brutal attacks. He terrorized the city for 25 years, a quarter of a century of fear, pain, and loss. His reign of terror left an indelible mark on the community, a scar that would never fully heal. Franklin's reign of terror began in the 1980s, a decade marked by significant social and economic challenges. South Central Los Angeles was a community in turmoil, grappling with the devastating impact of drugs and violence, a time of crack cocaine and societal upheaval. The streets were rife with addiction, and the air was thick with tension. It was in this chaotic environment that Franklin found his opportunity. He saw an opportunity in the chaos. The disorder provided the perfect cover for his heinous acts. He watched, waited, and struck when the moment was right. His targets? Women on the fringes, those who were often overlooked by society, women who were struggling to survive, battling addiction, or forced into the shadows of prostitution, trapped in the clutches of addiction. These women were vulnerable, desperate, and often alone. Easy prey for a predator like Franklin, or forced into the shadows of prostitution. They walked the streets at night, trying to make a living in the only way they knew how. But in the darkness, danger was always lurking. The Grim Sleeper's crimes were brutal, calculated. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he did it with chilling precision. Each crime scene was a testament to his cold, methodical nature. He would lure his victims with the promise of drugs or money, a simple transaction that would end in horror. They trusted him, if only for a moment, and that moment was all he needed. Then, he would unleash his depravity, shooting them, strangling them. The violence was swift, merciless, and final, discarding their bodies like trash. He showed no remorse, no hesitation. To him they were disposable, mere objects to be used and discarded. For years he operated with impunity. The police were baffled, the community was terrified, and Franklin continued his deadly game, a ghost in the night. He was elusive, always one step ahead. His ability to vanish without a trace only added to his terrifying legend, leaving a trail of bodies and shattered lives. Each victim was a daughter, a sister, a mother. Their families left to pick up the pieces, their lives forever changed. The police seemed powerless to stop him. Despite their best efforts, Franklin remained at large, his crimes unsolved, his identity a mystery. The community lived in fear. Every night brought the possibility of another attack. The Grim Sleeper was a constant, looming threat, casting a dark shadow over South Central Los Angeles. Lonnie Franklin Jr. preyed on women society often overlooks. Women like Deborah Jackson, found in an alleyway in 1985. A single gunshot wound, her body left to rot. Or Henrietta Wright, discovered 2 years later. Another victim silenced. Another life extinguished. These women were not random targets. They were carefully chosen. They were daughters, mothers, sisters. But to Franklin, they were disposable. Their lives, marred by poverty and addiction, made them easy prey. He knew they wouldn't be missed, at least not enough for anyone to care. How did Lonnie Franklin Jr. evade capture for so long? He was a phantom, a ghost in the night. He blended into the fabric of South Central. He was a mechanic, a garbage collector, a neighbor. No one suspected the evil that lurked beneath the surface. Franklin was meticulous. He left few clues at his crime scenes. He was careful not to leave behind DNA evidence, or so he thought. He was cunning. He exploited the social fault lines in the city. He knew the police were often overwhelmed and understaffed. He knew his victims wouldn't be priorities. The year is 2010. Technology has advanced. DNA analysis has become more sophisticated. A cold case unit reopens the Grim Sleeper investigation. They have a new tool at their disposal, familial DNA searching. They run the killer's DNA through the system. A partial match. The match leads them to Lonnie Franklin Jr.'s son. He had been arrested on a weapons charge. His DNA was in the system. The police put Franklin under surveillance. They obtain a discarded pizza crust. His DNA is on it. It's a match to the Grim Sleeper. Section 5. A ghastly photo album, Faces of the Forgotten. This chapter delves into the chilling discovery that left an indelible mark on the community and the investigators involved. It's a story that unveils the hidden horrors lurking in the shadows of South Central. The arrest of Lonnie Franklin Jr. sent shockwaves through South Central. Known as the Grim Sleeper, his capture brought a sense of relief, but also a wave of dread as the community braced for the revelations to come. But the horror was far from over. The true extent of his crimes was yet to be uncovered, and what lay ahead was a journey into the macabre. During a search of Franklin's home, investigators stumbled upon a gruesome discovery. Hundreds of photos, hidden in boxes, each image a silent witness to unspeakable acts, tucked away in his garage. The sheer volume of photographs was overwhelming, each one a potential clue to the lives he had touched and destroyed. The photos were of women who had once lived, laughed, and loved. Now their memories were reduced to faded images, trapped in time. Many of them appeared to be unconscious or deceased. Some were posed. The staging of these photos suggested a sinister ritual, a macabre trophy collection. Their eyes stared blankly from the images, ghosts trapped in time. Each photograph a haunting reminder of lives cut short, dreams unfulfilled, the faces of the forgotten. These women, once vibrant and full of life, were now mere specters, their stories silenced by the Grim Sleeper. The discovery sent chills down the spines of even the most seasoned detectives. Who were these women? What were their stories? Each photograph raised more questions than answers. Were they all victims of the Grim Sleeper? The investigators were left to piece together the puzzle, to give names to the faces, and to seek justice for the forgotten. The photos became a haunting puzzle, each image a piece of a larger, more terrifying picture. A grim testament to the scope of Franklin's depravity. A grim testament to the scope of Franklin's depravity. The faces of the forgotten serve as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind a seemingly ordinary facade. Section 6. Justice delayed, justice denied, systemic failings. The case of Lonnie Franklin Jr. exposed deep flaws in the justice system. For years, his crimes went unpunished, his victims ignored, the police slow to connect the dots. Why? The answer is complex. It's a story of systemic racism, of indifference towards marginalized communities, of a justice system that often fails the most vulnerable. Many believe that if Franklin's victims had been white and affluent, the police would have dedicated more resources to catching him. Section 7. A community in fear. The ripple effect. The Grim Sleeper's reign of terror cast a long shadow over South Central Los Angeles. For years, the community lived in fear. Mothers kept their daughters close. Women were afraid to walk alone at night. The streets felt unsafe. The fear was palpable. It permeated every aspect of life in South Central. It bred mistrust. It eroded the social fabric of the community. The Grim Sleeper didn't just take lives, he stole a sense of security. He shattered the peace. Section 8. Closure and questions. The aftermath. In 2016, Lonnie Franklin Jr. was found guilty of 10 counts of murder. He was sentenced to death. But his conviction brought little solace to the families of his victims. The pain was still raw. The scars remained. The case of the grim sleeper left many unanswered questions. Who were the women in the photos? Were there other victims? And why did it take so long to bring him to justice? These questions continue to haunt the families of the victims. Section 9. Conclusion. The legacy of the grim sleeper. Lonnie Franklin Jr., the grim sleeper, is gone. His death marks the end of a dark chapter in the history of Los Angeles. But the shadows of his actions still linger. But his legacy of terror lives on. The fear he instilled in the community, the lives he shattered, and the trust he broke are scars that remain. His crimes serve as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the shadows. They highlight the vulnerabilities within our society and the ease with which evil can exploit them. They are a testament to the vulnerability of the marginalized and the indifference they often face. The grim sleeper preyed on those who were often overlooked, whose disappearances went unnoticed for far too long. The story of the grim sleeper is a story of loss. It is a narrative filled with grief and sorrow, of families torn apart and communities left in mourning, of fear, of injustice. The fear that gripped the streets, the injustice felt by those who believed their cries for help were ignored. But it is also a story of resilience. Despite the terror, the community found strength in unity. They marched, they protested, and they demanded to be heard. Of a community that came together to demand justice. They refused to let the grim sleeper's actions define them, instead choosing to fight for a safer future. Of families who never gave up hope. They held on to the memories of their loved ones, lighting candles in their honor, keeping their spirits alive. And of the victims whose lives, though tragically cut short, will never be forgotten. Their stories serve as a powerful reminder of the need for vigilance, compassion, and justice in our society.